In a tense showdown beneath the Arizona moonlight, a seemingly ordinary rancher's wife named Rebecca Mercer revealed herself as none other than the legendary gunslinger, Swifthand Rebecca. Captured by the ruthless Black Mesa Gang, Rebecca strategically allowed herself to be taken hostage, only to dismantle their entire criminal empire from within. With lightning-fast gunfire and nerves of steel, she outsmarted corrupt army officials, disrupted an illegal weapons smuggling network, and turned a hidden mission into the site of frontier justice. But the climax of this incredible tale isn't just in the gunfight. It's how Rebecca exposed a conspiracy reaching the highest ranks of government. If you want to find out how one woman single-handedly took down powerful criminals and reclaimed peace for her territory, stay with us till the very end. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel to support more amazing stories like this one. Leave your comments below. Let us know where you're listening from and your thoughts about Rebecca's incredible journey. In the Arizona territory of 1885, legends didn't just drift on the wind. They wore boots and carried revolvers. Across this sun-scorched land, the Black Mesa Gang ruled by fear, bribery, and raw violence. Led by the infamous Victor Viper Dalton, they had a tally of bank robberies, dead lawmen, and burned-out homesteads that would frighten any honest soul. From the Mexican border to the Colorado River, their influence spread like a brush fire. But on one blistering July evening, the gang made an error they would soon regret. They set their sights on a prosperous ranch owned by Adam Mercer and his quiet wife, Rebecca Mercer. Anyone gazing upon the Double M Ranch at sunset might believe it a simple spread of farmland with tidy corrals and wide pastures. On that particular evening, Rebecca was alone out by the stables, tending to the horses. To the Black Mesa scouts watching from afar, she looked like just another rancher's wife, an easy target. The gang intended to use the ranch's water rights for their next venture, control of a final, crucial line of water sources that would make them truly unstoppable. Little did they know, behind Rebecca's gentle smile lay a different truth. She was the same gunslinger once known across the frontier as Swifthand Rebecca, rumored to have ended a dozen outlaws in one legendary shootout without drawing first. Inside the ranch house, Adam Mercer pored over old newspaper clippings. His coffee cup trembled in his large hand. The sound of the spoon against the porcelain threatened to give away his nervous energy. "They've been sighted again along the fence line," he said to Rebecca when she stepped in from outside. "Diana Gray rode by earlier and said that group with the black bandanas was watching us. You're sure they're from Black Mesa?" Rebecca calmly began wiping her hands on a small towel. "They've scouted us at least 3 times this week," she replied. "Same men, different vantage points. One even carried a battered old Confederate pistol at his hip. His stance was all wrong, though. He's more interested in intimidation than real skill." Adam shook his head. "That's exactly it. Intimidation. If Dalton wants the Double M, we both know he won't simply ask again. He'll move in to take it." Rebecca allowed herself a faint smile. "Good. We need them to think I'm harmless. Let them keep watching." Adam gave her a measured look. Even after 8 years of marriage, there were moments he caught a glimpse of the famed gunslinger behind her eyes. An aura of quiet certainty that made even the fiercest men quail. "I'll say it again. We could sell. The offer is well above what we paid. We could start over someplace else." Her expression turned steely. "You know as well as I do. That's not an option. The Double M is more than land. It's a piece of this territory's future. Black Mesa has been pressuring ranchers, forcing them to sell out. You've seen the pattern, Adam. They want to own every reliable water source along the border. This is the last one that stands free." The topic hung heavy in the air. The land might be valuable, but there was a deeper reason they had stayed. 8 years prior, Rebecca had been on the trail of a sprawling weapons smuggling operation, a hidden empire that used random frontier crime to cloak a much larger scheme. She'd nearly brought it all to light before corruption high up in official ranks buried her investigation. Since then, she had lain low, waiting for any sign the operation was resurging. "We need proof," she said softly, turning over one of Adam's dusty newspapers. "They're involved in smuggling something, maybe weapons again. I can't act until I'm certain, or it will all be covered up just like before." A thunderous knock at the door made both of them flinch. Peering out the window, Rebecca saw half a dozen riders waiting in a semicircle. At their center, a tall man with a jagged scar on his cheek, wearing a grimy black hat tilted low. Victor Viper Dalton stepped down with practiced confidence, the spurs on his boots glinting in the dying sunlight. "Mr. and Mrs. Mercer," Dalton called, voice full of forced cheer, "I come on behalf of the Black Mesa Gang with a proposition." Adam moved toward the door, but Rebecca laid a hand on his arm. "I'll handle it," she murmured. "Stay inside, no matter what you hear." She stepped out onto the porch, letting the screen door creak behind her, posture carefully feigning vulnerability. Dalton doffed his hat with exaggerated politeness. "Lovely evening, ma'am," he drawled. "I must say you've got a fine spread here. Wouldn't want anything unfortunate to happen, you understand?" "I'd like you to leave," Rebecca replied bluntly. "This ranch isn't for sale." Dalton chuckled. "Now that's not how this dance goes. Fact is, my associates and I have seen how valuable your water access is. We're prepared to offer $20,000 for it, outright." She let a flicker of false fear across her face, stepping back. Dalton's men spread out slightly, forming a half-moon around her. She noticed each man's grip near his holster. Amateur intimidation tactics, exactly as she'd predicted. "That's, well, I'd have to discuss it with my husband," she said, voice trembling. Dalton's smile remained, but the threat beneath was unmistakable. "You do that. I'll be back in 3 days. If you aren't convinced by then, we might just move to less polite methods." The men whirled their horses around, galloping off in a swirl of dust. Rebecca watched them until they vanished into the distance. Then the trembling in her posture ceased as if it had never been there. She stepped calmly inside to rejoin Adam. "They're pushing faster than I'd hoped," she said, "which means they're on a schedule. Dalton wouldn't show his hand so soon unless something bigger was at stake. Whatever the reason, they want this land now." Adam exhaled. "What do we do next?" Rebecca allowed a dangerous gleam to surface in her eyes. "We go to Silver Springs and see just how deep these people's connections run. If my suspicions are correct, we're dealing with a piece of that old smuggling ring I was hunting, and I'll need to lure them in further." The next day, she harnessed their wagon and set out for Silver Springs, once a modest settlement that had grown into a vital trading hub, thanks ironically to the same water routes the Black Mesa Gang coveted. Rebecca kept a watchful eye on her surroundings, noting any sign of trailing riders. By the time she reached the bustling single main street, she'd already counted at least 3 suspicious men perched on horses, scanning for an opportunity to cause trouble. She guided the wagon to Martha Green's general store, a place where you could buy everything from nails to licorice sticks. Inside, the store was empty except for Martha herself, leaning against the counter. In front of her stood 2 of Dalton's goons wearing the black bandanas. One was short and wiry, the other tall and sullen. The wiry one snarled, "Protection payments are rising, Martha. $500 a month. You don't like it, you can close up shop. But we hear you keep running that mouth about us." Rebecca strolled in, letting the bell over the door chime. She picked up a sack of beans from a shelf, acting like she hadn't noticed the tension. "Hot out there today," she said casually. "Martha, you have any of that new coffee in stock?" All 3 turned to stare. The taller bandit glowered at her with his hand on his holster. "Lady, this ain't your business. Scoot along." Rebecca ignored the suggestion. "Martha," she continued in a friendly tone, "I could use a broom and a new pair of gloves if you have them." The defiance seemed to startle the outlaws. The short one, anger flaring, pulled a pistol halfway from its holster. "We said—" Rebecca's gaze flicked over him, calculating the angle of his draw and the tension in his wrist. She showed no outward alarm. "Easy there, friends," she said. "We wouldn't want any accidents." An uneasy moment of silence filled the room. Finally, the short outlaw spat on the floor, nodded at Martha, and left with his partner. The door slammed, leaving the store in awkward quiet. "Thank you," Martha breathed, coming around the counter. "But that was dangerous. They'll remember you stepping in." Rebecca gave a tight smile. "That's all right. I need them to see me as a nuisance, a foolish ranch wife who doesn't know better. It may push them to make their move sooner." Martha watched her with widening eyes. "You sure that's a good thing?" "It has to be," Rebecca said simply. "I can't uncover what they're truly up to without them trusting I'm exactly who they think I am." Martha hesitated. Sheriff Barrow is worried. He said the Black Mesa Gang's been looking to expand. Dalton's got army deserters, cutthroats from as far away as New Orleans. They're not just petty criminals, they're organized. Rebecca took her purchased items and nodded. Good to know, thank you. Stay safe, Martha. Outside, she placed her goods in the wagon, flicking her gaze to a false bottom where her custom-fitted Colt revolver lay hidden. Not for the first time, she felt the conflicting pull of an old life creeping back. But old habits died hard, and so did old grudges. Dr. James Holloway's clinic was Rebecca's next stop. She found him leafing through a ledger with shaking hands. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. Mrs. Mercer, he said, forcing a polite smile. You're here for supplies? They're not due until next week. Rebecca took note of the new security bars on his windows. You've made improvements, Doc, she observed. Expecting trouble? Holloway's voice trembled. They brought in 3 men last night with bullet wounds. Claimed it was a hunting accident, but the shots were from modern military rifles. Clean and precise. I was told to keep quiet. They threatened me. Rebecca glanced around. It fits everything I've seen. These men are more than highway robbers. They have some military background, possibly smuggling firearms. Did they mention who shot them? The doctor shook his head. All I know is they want my records on those injuries. They said they'd come back with or without my cooperation. No sooner had he finished speaking than the door burst open, admitting 2 of Dalton's henchmen, led by an enforcer named Vince Snake Eyes Marlin. Rebecca had heard rumors about him in her old life, quick on the draw but easily outmaneuvered when pressed. Doc, Snake Eyes demanded, hand over your patient files. The boss wants to see who's been getting patched up. Holloway mustered a look of quiet resolve. Patient confidentiality is part of my oath. I can't simply... Snake Eyes knocked over a tray of instruments, nostrils flaring. We don't care about your oath. Rebecca, standing off to the side, cleared her throat. You're always so charming, Mr. Marlin. He turned abruptly, eyes narrowed. And you are? Just a rancher's wife, she said with mild exasperation. I do hope your men are all right. Must be risky business if they're coming in with bullet holes from fancy rifles. A flash of alarm showed in his face. Her remark hit too close to details they wanted hidden. Best you mind your own business, lady, he growled, moving closer. Rebecca shrugged, stepping aside. Suit yourself. But Snake Eyes looked uneasy. He snatched a handful of folders off Holloway's desk and left with his men, not even bothering to muzzle her. They were rushing, losing their grip. Thank you, Holloway sighed, wiping sweat from his brow. But they're going to keep pushing until they get what they want. Rebecca's lips quirked slightly. Then let them. The more they scramble, the more mistakes they'll make. That's how we take them down. As she walked out, she thought back to her days as an undercover ranger tracking illegal gun shipments after the Civil War. Ghosting from town to town, collecting slivers of evidence, building a case, she recognized the pattern. A large-scale operation was underway, bigger than just a local gang. Black Mesa was the visible tip of something deeper. Mounting her wagon for the trip home, she saw Adam approaching from the opposite direction, worry etched on his face. Heard from the sheriff that you're in town stirring the pot, he said. People are saying you faced down 2 of Dalton's men in the general store. She turned the reins in her hands. I want them to come for me, she admitted. We can't fight them in the open. Once they take me, I'll be at the center of their operation, exactly where I need to be. Adam's expression tightened. The last time you went undercover, you were nearly killed. You said you wouldn't do it again. She softened, leaning toward him. I know, but we're out of time. This territory can't keep bowing to Black Mesa. And if these men are connected to the same arms smugglers from years ago, then I have to finish what I started. Adam looked at her for a long moment, then sighed. Just come back. Promise me that. She gave a small nod. Always. 2 nights later, Rebecca Mercer stood by the barn, scanning the darkness. Over in the ranch house, the only light visible was from a single lantern. Adam was inside, awaiting her signal. The hush of the desert weighed on her senses, perfectly still, yet pulsing with unseen threats. She had spotted the Black Mesa scouts twice earlier that day. Her plan was simple: appear unguarded and let them capture her. Once inside their hideout, she could gather the last pieces of evidence she needed to confirm the presence of large-scale gun running or more. Then she'd dismantle the operation from within, exactly as she'd done years prior in El Paso, when corrupt officials stifled her evidence. Sure enough, a muffled whoomp shattered the silence. A flashbang device sailed through the open barn door, illuminating the night in sudden brilliance. Rebecca staggered, arms thrown up in a display of forced disorientation. Black Mesa gunmen, moving with surprising coordination, rushed in. "Hands in the air," one shouted. She complied, deliberately letting them zip-tie her wrists. A masked figure loomed close, pistol raised. "Boss wants her alive," he growled. "No slip-ups." Rebecca let her breath come in short, panicked gasps, part of the performance. Inside, her heart raced, not from fear, but from adrenaline. Victor Viper Dalton himself waited on horseback out front. As they pulled her from the barn, she saw his silhouette against the moonlit sky. "So good to see you again, Mrs. Mercer," he said sarcastically. "Sorry we didn't knock first." Her knees buckled convincingly. What do you want?" she whimpered. Dalton laughed low. "Same as before, but you and your husband didn't cooperate. So now we'll do this the hard way. You're going to be our guest until Mr. Mercer signs over the double M. Shouldn't take long." They hoisted her onto a waiting horse, binding her ankles. One final glance at the ranch house revealed no movement. Good, she thought. Adam was staying put, as planned. She could only imagine the storm of emotions he'd feel. But they both knew what had to be done. The journey took about half an hour. Rebecca carefully counted the turns and listened for the distinct roar of the wind that signaled a canyon. They arrived at an old Spanish mission. Crumbling walls, broken archways. From the faint torchlight, she saw men patrolling on the parapets. They hauled her inside, tying her to a wooden chair in the mission's central hall. Despite the dilapidation, the place was buzzing with activity. Crates lined the corridors, marked with stencils that suggested military origin. Rifles, ammunition, possibly artillery. Everything was moving with methodical, military-like precision. Dalton leaned in, pulling off his gloves. "I'll let you in on a secret, Mrs. Mercer. This is about more than your ranch. We have a buyer, an important one, who needs a covert route through the territory for shipments. Water is key to moving contraband. Now that we have almost every major source along the border, your double M is the last piece." She let her head loll, adopting the battered look. "What shipments?" Dalton gave a dangerous smile. "You'll see soon enough." Outside the hall, she overheard heated discussions among men with more formal training than simple outlaws. A tall lieutenant was barking orders about guard rotations and scanning the perimeter with a field telescope. These were ex-soldiers, or perhaps still on some official payroll. She noted their crisp stances, the standardized hand signals. A large crate was open nearby, revealing rows of rifles, carefully packed in straw. The stamps on the metal catches made her pulse spike. U.S. Cavalry. She'd seen those exact smuggling marks before, years ago in an operation that had been covered up. The old conspiracy she'd chased was indeed alive. From a corner came a voice filled with curiosity. "So you're the famous ranch wife who wouldn't sell? Seems rather foolish to me." Rebecca turned her gaze to find a wiry man with cold eyes. Emilio Iron Eyes Fuentes, if the rumors were right. They called him Iron Eyes because his stare would make men pause. But she'd faced worse. "You the new boss's second in command?" she asked quietly, forcing a tremor into her voice. "Close enough," he snarled. "Or I will be, once we secure this deal." He meandered toward her, crossing his arms. "What is it about that ranch, anyway?" She forced a laugh of disbelief. "You think it's special? It's just some farmland." A grin quirked at his lips. "Funny, we know differently." He reached into a satchel and produced papers. Maps showing the region's water tables. The double M's direct access to the largest aquifer. "We can move contraband along this corridor and never run out of water. All we had to do was scare or buy out the competition." Rebecca took everything in, noticing the distinct insignia on the map that suggested official land survey records. Possibly stolen from a government archive. She kept her face neutral, but her mind raced. The scale was massive, implicating more than a local gang. This was a pipeline for moving guns, maybe even more, through the southwestern border, tapping a clandestine route shielded by official corruption. Dalton reappeared, leaning against a post. I'll be sending a message to your husband. Once he signs the papers, you go free. We get the double M. Rebecca feigned a dejected slump while her eyes darted around, noting guard patterns in doorways. She recognized a door leading to an adjoining courtyard, another passage evidently connected to an old chapel. The mission was a labyrinth of possible exit routes, if one knew how to exploit them. Back at the ranch, Adam Mercer paced in the lamplit living room, reading and rereading a ransom note delivered by one of Dalton's men. He was to sign over the double M, effective immediately, or else never see his wife again. Torn between dread and faith in Rebecca's plan, he also remembered her final words. Contact Nathan if you don't hear from me every 6 hours. Outside, a horse galloped up. Adam hurried to the porch where a bearded stranger dismounted. Name's Nathan, he said, lifting his hat. Rebecca told me she might need my help. Is it time? Adam nodded briskly. She's gone. They took her. If you know where they might keep her. Nathan exhaled. We had a tip from folks near Dead Man's Canyon about an old Spanish mission. She hinted that might be their hideout. Come on, let's ride. They set off under cover of night, determined to follow Rebecca's instructions and close in carefully. The mission was heavily guarded. A direct assault would be suicide. But they had to be in position when Rebecca made her move. Meanwhile, inside the mission, Rebecca tested the ropes binding her hands. From the swirl of discussions around her, she gleaned that a high-level buyer was arriving soon. A certain colonel, name unspoken, who had arranged a major arms deal. Once they finished the transaction, Black Mesa would move the goods swiftly across the border. Your husband's a fool if he doesn't sign, Dalton taunted, strolling over with casual menace. But I'm betting he won't risk your life. And if he tries anything, well, he let the implication hang. Rebecca lowered her head as though cowed. Inside, her heart raced, not from fear, but from readiness. She had spent 8 years waiting for a chance to draw these men out, to expose the hidden conspiracy. With the colonel's arrival, she'd get the final piece. Somewhere beyond the mission walls, she hoped Nathan and Adam were positioning themselves. She knew exactly how to signal them when the time came. For now, she just had to wait, listening for certain clues, like the colonel's name or references to official supply lines. A few hours before dawn, her opportunity arrived. A rider burst through the mission gates in a flurry of dust, dismounting to speak urgently with Dalton. Rebecca caught fragments of the conversation. Something about federal marshals, rangers, and cut telegraph lines. Tension in the mission spiked. Was that a leak in our system? One of Dalton's ex-soldiers demanded. We were told the route was secure. Dalton hissed. It's that meddling rancher's wife. She must have friends or some old connection. We need to accelerate the timetable. Men rushed about, stacking crates and checking rifles. Rebecca felt the fear in the air. Fear of exposure. These were professional smugglers, but their operation was on shaky ground. In the chaos, an older man with a neat gray mustache strode in. Colonel Remington, in immaculate riding boots. His posture radiated authority, overshadowing Dalton's swagger. 2 lieutenants trailed him, their expressions grim. I expected better from you, Dalton, Colonel Remington said with clipped disapproval. That ranch was supposed to be ours quietly, without stirring up a hornet's nest. Now I hear rumors of rangers and marshals. Dalton started to explain, but Remington's cold glare shut him up. The colonel then turned to where Rebecca sat, bound. So you're the reason for the complications. Swifthand Rebecca, they say. Dalton blinked. Swifthand? She's just a rancher's wife, Remington sneered. Fool, she was a ranger. The stories from El Paso, from Laredo. Don't you bother reading intelligence reports? A murmur went through the men. Several had heard legends of a female gunslinger who took down entire gangs with cunning and speed. Dalton paled, realizing he'd captured the very person his buyer least wanted to see. Rebecca smiled faintly. You give me too much credit, Colonel. I'm just a woman trying to protect her homestead. He stepped closer. Enough pretense. The question is, how deeply have you compromised this operation? And why haven't you been silenced? At this, Dalton interjected, We planned to ransom her off. Didn't realize. The colonel's face darkened with disgust. Ransom a known ranger with half the territory after her. Are you insane? His attention snapped back to Rebecca. No matter. Your meddling ends now. This entire ring can't be exposed. I'll handle you personally and then we'll move out by dawn, with or without the deed to that ranch. Just as the colonel leveled a revolver at her, gunfire sounded outside. Shots that signaled an intrusion or an attempted infiltration. The men scattered, some running to barricade entrances, others to secure the crates of guns. Remington hesitated, cursing under his breath. Perfect, Rebecca thought. Time to play her hand. The sudden commotion outside wasn't a full-scale assault. Nathan and a handful of allies were creating diversions, picking off the sentries from a distance, forcing the smugglers to spread thin. The entire mission erupted into chaos. Rebecca used the distraction to slip her ropes. She'd spent months practicing the technique. A twist of the wrists, a shift of angles, and the knots came loose. She dove behind a pillar just as Colonel Remington fired a shot. The bullet ricocheted off the stone. Adrenaline surged in her veins. She yanked open the mission side closet, where she'd spotted some gear earlier. Sure enough, her custom Colt was there. Adam must have planted it while making a secret infiltration the previous day. Now armed, Rebecca pivoted into the main corridor. The colonel's men, professionals though they were, had never faced Swifthand Rebecca at her prime. She squeezed off 3 shots, each carefully aimed to disarm rather than kill, a gesture of her personal code. Bullets smashed weapons from the men's grips, sending them reeling. From the opposite end of the corridor, Dalton stormed in with half a dozen outlaws. "Shoot her!" he roared. The muzzle flashes lit up the dusty hallway. Rebecca dropped to one knee, returning precise fire. Her mind worked methodically, each target accounted for, each shot placing them on the defensive. She felt the old rush, the skill that had once made her a near-mythic figure among both lawmen and criminals. The entire mission was now a battleground. Outside, Nathan had pinned down several of Dalton's watchers. Adam, though not as skilled as his wife in gunplay, had found a vantage point with a rifle, ensuring no one escaped by the side gate. Rebecca advanced, heart hammering, using columns for cover as she made her way toward the largest courtyard. Overturned crates and scattered straw revealed the gang's plan was unraveling. Then a heavy crash sounded as a chunk of the old mission ceiling collapsed from stray bullets, sending dust and debris swirling. Colonel Remington emerged from the cloud, coughing, eyes burning with rage. He'd replaced his revolver with a confiscated rifle. "You think you can stop this, Mercer? We have backers in Washington, men with real power. One gunslinger won't bring them down." Her gaze hardened. "You'd be surprised what one determined person can do, Colonel, especially one who's been waiting 8 years to end this conspiracy." She fired. He ducked behind a toppled statue. Across the courtyard, Dalton realized his men were outmaneuvered. Many dropped their guns rather than face Swifthand's aim, while others lay wounded or pinned. Furious, he sprinted for the stables, presumably to flee. Rebecca had spotted him, but she couldn't let Remington regroup. That was the bigger priority. Dalton was a pawn. The colonel was the key to the smuggling ring. She carefully circled around the statue to flush him out, but he was cunning. A shot whistled past her ear, close enough to tear the brim of her hat. Remington stepped forward, rifle leveled. "Drop the gun and surrender, or I'll shoot." Rebecca froze. They were mere yards apart. She could see the madness in his eyes, the knowledge that everything he'd worked for was collapsing around him. Then a single rifle crack echoed from above. A bullet thudded into the ground at Remington's feet, throwing up dust. Adam's voice boomed from a broken window on the second floor. "That was a warning, Colonel. Next one goes through your heart." Seizing the moment, Rebecca dropped and rolled, snapping off 2 shots at Remington's rifle. One bullet struck the barrel. The second slammed into the chamber's edge, forcing him to drop the weapon with a cry of pain. She sprang up, her Colt still aimed at him. "It's over." From all around them, the last flickers of resistance died out. Those who tried to run found themselves blocked by well-placed shots from Nathan or pinned by friendly ranchers who had joined the cause. Dalton was dragged out of the stable by his collar, cursing. The top brass of the Black Mesa Gang were done. At dawn, the mission courtyard was a scene of epilogue and exposition. The crates of weapons had been pried open, revealing a trove of U.S. cavalry hardware. Documents found in Remington's satchel detailed complicity from a few high-ranked officials back east. Everyone who had insisted Rebecca's old investigation was baseless would now see the truth. Nathan stepped forward with a bundle of telegrams. I sent riders to Sheriff Barrow and the marshals. They'll be here by midday. We've got more than enough to charge them under federal law. Rebecca surveyed the devastation. Once the marshals see these crates, the evidence is undeniable. They won't be able to ignore this smuggling ring any longer. Colonel Remington glared from where he sat, hands bound, eyes full of venom. You have no idea who you're messing with, he spat. Connections, high places, politicians, you'll never bring them all down. Rebecca walked over, standing tall. Maybe not all at once, but piece by piece your empire falls. And I'll keep going until every name in your record sees a day in court. Dalton, nursing a bruised jaw, sneered. You stupid ranchers. That water route we wanted? Others will come for it. You can't guard it forever. She shrugged. Then we'll stand ready. The frontier is changing, Dalton. Not every rancher is a pushover. Not every gunslinger is an outlaw. In the background, the newly freed doctor, Holloway and a few volunteers tended to the wounded, criminal and ally alike. The hush in the aftermath of battle held a strange peace, punctured only by the groans of the injured and the clank of shifting ammunition boxes. Adam embraced his wife gently. You did it, he murmured, relief washing over his face, and you came back. She closed her eyes a moment, letting the tension drain. Yes, we did it, all of us. But this is only the start. Once the marshals arrive, once we reveal Colonel Remington's stash of forged documents, more arrests will follow. Maybe even some big names in Washington. A stir at the gates heralded Sheriff Barrow's arrival with a small posse. They approached in wary awe, noting the bound men and confiscated contraband. The sheriff whistled low when he saw the sheer volume of rifles and crates. My God, Barrow breathed. I suspected Dalton was bad news, but this is a full-blown arms ring. And a colonel? Rebecca gave a respectful nod. I have records to prove it. Dalton, Remington, and their associates were using the Double M's water to keep these shipments moving. Their plan was nearly complete. I'm sorry I couldn't share more details with you earlier, Sheriff. I needed them to believe I was vulnerable. The sheriff shook his head in amazement. I'll need your statement, obviously, and that of your husband, Dr. Holloway, everyone. The marshals are en route. Frankly, I think you've saved half the territory by shutting this down. Nathan approached with a fresh ledger he'd found. Look at this. Payments to multiple forts along the border, hush money for Army officers, and documentation of how these rifles were lost in transit. It's bigger than anything we guessed. Adam glanced at Rebecca. Your old case from 8 years back. This is connected. She nodded slowly. Yes, the leftover fragments of that smuggling ring reassembled under new leadership. Men like Dalton for muscle, Remington for official sway. But this time, we have the proof we need to bring them down. Within hours, more riders arrived, federal marshals summoned by urgent telegram. They cordoned off the old mission, took statements, and loaded the prisoners into wagons. Colonel Remington never stopped threatening them, even as he was led away. But the marshals paid him no mind. They had the documents, the crates, the testimonies. His threats rang hollow now. In the late afternoon sun, the courtyard became a bustling hub of official activity. Rebecca caught her reflection in a fragment of broken mirror. Dust-smudged cheeks, the brim of her hat torn from a bullet. She looked every bit the weathered gunslinger from the old days. Sheriff Barrow approached with a weary grin. One of the marshals wanted to meet the famous Swifthand. She told him he'd find you near the supply wagon. She sighed, holstering her revolver. I'd just as soon not wave that name around. I did what had to be done. Barrow chuckled softly. You can't stop folks from spinning new legends. Maybe that's not a bad thing. People out here need a reminder that justice can still bite back at criminals. Later, she and Adam mounted their horses, preparing to head home. The marshals needed them for formal interviews the next day, but for now she wanted nothing more than to return to the quiet sanctuary of the Double M. Nathan tipped his hat. I'll be in Silver Springs if you need me, finishing up some business. The folks in town should know you're on their side. Rebecca gave him a grateful nod. Thank you for riding in when we needed you most. Keep watch in case others try to fill the vacuum Dalton left. He agreed, and the couple turned their horses toward the ranch. As they rode, Adam reached out and gently squeezed Rebecca's hand. I never doubted you. he murmured, but I'm still relieved we'll wake up together tomorrow. She looked toward the horizon, painted gold by the setting sun. We'll wake up free, Adam. Free from the shadow of that gang and free to live on our own land. And maybe we've helped free this territory from a worse evil that had been hiding in the background for too long. They traversed the dusty trail, the desert wind whispering hints of new possibilities. Word would spread of how the quiet ranch wife had undone a powerful conspiracy. People in the saloons and across campfires might soon tell tall tales of Swifthand Rebecca, who outshot trained soldiers and outsmarted a colonel. But to her, the real victory was protecting the Double M and ensuring that the seeds of corruption she once hunted were at last laid bare. In the weeks that followed, arrests rippled across the territory. Several minor officials were named in the ledgers, and more secret stockpiles of weapons were discovered. Emboldened ranchers and townsfolk, freed from the Black Mesa Gang's control, began rebuilding with new hope. The Double M Ranch, still independent, became a symbol of how oppression could be challenged. For her part, Rebecca testified before federal courts, turning over every piece of evidence she and Nathan had collected. The rumor mill claimed the bigwigs in Washington were furious, scrambling to distance themselves from Colonel Remington and any officials he'd implicated. Meanwhile, honest lawmen praised her actions, some going so far as to say she'd single-handedly changed the balance of power in the Southwest. Yet despite her renewed fame, Rebecca Mercer wanted only a quiet life. With the smuggling ring exposed, she was free to embrace the future she and Adam had built at the Double M. Sometimes the local kids came around, hoping to glimpse the rumored gunslinger. She'd smile and greet them politely, offering treats for their horses. Only occasionally did she slip away to the practice range behind the barn to keep her hands steady and ensure her skills stayed sharp, just in case. One evening, Adam found her gazing across the ranch's western boundary, where the horizon melted into fiery orange. "Penny for your thoughts?" he asked. She holstered her revolver, turning with a serene smile, thinking about how this territory changes. The new rail lines, the telegraph expansions. It won't be the same frontier in a few years. Maybe that's good. Less room for gangs like Black Mesa to terrorize people. Adam stepped forward, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Change is coming, but I reckon we can handle it." Rebecca nodded. "We always have." As the sun sank behind distant mesas, they stood side by side, the hush of twilight settling around them. The name Swifthand Rebecca would echo in legends and dime novels for decades. But to Adam, and to the land she called home, she was simply the woman who refused to let corruption go unchecked. The quiet guardian who, in one fateful summer, reminded everyone that justice can still ride tall in the saddle. And so ended the tale of the Black Mesa Gang's downfall and the end of a grand conspiracy. Yet in the soft hush of the Arizona night, the seed of a new era was sown. One where good folk would stand against the darkness, bolstered by the memory of a lone ranch wife who could draw faster than lightning, and who used those skills not for wealth or fame, but for the freedom of the land she loved. In the end, justice prevailed, and Rebecca Mercer restored hope and freedom to the Arizona territory. The Black Mesa Gang was defeated, corrupt officials faced trial, and a new era of honest living returned to the land. Rebecca chose peace, returning to a quiet life alongside her husband Adam, proving that true strength is not only found in the speed of your gun, but also in courage, patience, and integrity. Her story inspires us to stand against corruption, reminding us that every individual has the power to make a difference. Thank you so much for listening to this remarkable tale of bravery and justice. Now we'd love to hear your thoughts. What did you find most inspiring about Rebecca's story? Leave your comments below to join the discussion. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. There are many more incredible stories coming your way.